You are now listening to Chloe Talks.
Hello. My name is Chloe Eason. I'm a freshman psychology major, history minor from Chicago, Illinois, and I attend Howard University. Today, we will be talking about stereotype threat and how it affects Black women's performance across academic and professional settings. Stereotype threat is the anxiety and pressure individuals feel when they are in a situation where they might confirm a negative stereotype about their social group. This is a term coined by social psychologists Claude Steele and Joshua Aronson. What I'm here to showcase is how stereotype threat limits epistemic agency, subjectivity, and freedom, and how we can use Black women philosophy to understand the extent of that harm. Also, how stereotype threat can reduce cognitive capacity and performance, shaping who gets opportunities, what statistics are given to the media, and how Black women are represented. My take on stereotype threat and how it's shown up in my life has predominantly been through my education, specifically when taking the ACT. My senior year, I took the ACT because I knew that my SAT scores weren't good enough, and because I experienced depression my first 2 years of high school, the grades didn't reflect my highest academic self. So naturally, my junior year, I did what any rational person would do, and I took 3 AP classes. Thankfully, I passed all of them and got my AP credit and was awarded the AP Scholar Award with a boosted GPA. But schools like consistency, and my proof of that could only be reassured from submitting test scores. So I took the ACT and I trained for it. My mom even paid for a tutor that coached me for months and made me into a test machine. I had it in the bag, so I thought I did at least. Yes, I do have anxiety, but that wasn't going to stop me because I knew how to take the test. I knew the formula. But something happened. When I stepped into the room at this unfamiliar Catholic school with all of these white kids, the only thing that I could think in my head was I wonder if they think I'm smart enough, if I'll get a good score like them. I was projected to get a 27 on the test. The median score for African Americans is 16. Some of the people in the class finished before me, and while I was taking the exam, I looked around insecure. I ended up having to take the test twice in order to get my score so that I could be a competitive candidate for college. This is how stereotype threat harms us and limits us. Now, I'm not here to argue about new ideas and new methods to alleviate this threat because, like Audre Lorde said, there are no new ideas, there are only new ways of making them felt. So instead of trying to conjure something up, I aim to use Black women philosophers like Patricia Hill Collins, Bell Hooks, and Anna Julia Cooper, and more voices to strengthen the evidence that stereotype threat needs to be taken seriously, and this new coined term has been happening for decades. When we come back from the break, I'm going to talk about how stereotype threat can continuously harm Black women because society sees us as strong and independent. So then we carry these tropes that can be harmful to our mental health. And I want my input to be helpful to the next Black woman to think about what their bodies need and maybe even set boundaries in their own lives so that they can live with clearer minds without having to bear the stress all the time.
Welcome back to Chloe Talks.
Now, the first thing I want to focus on is how stereotype threat is harmful for Black women in any environment, and these feelings can be described with Patricia Hill Collins' Black feminist thought, knowledge, consciousness, and the politics of empowerment. Patricia Hill Collins has this term called outsiders within, showcasing how Black women have unique experiences and are put into positions with them, yet they're overlooked. Furthermore, Collins' concept of the outsider within describes how Black women often occupy positions where they are present within dominant institutions like schools, workplaces, or social spaces, but are still treated as outsiders. They see how systems work from the inside, yet are excluded from full participation or recognition. Black women may feel pressure to disprove negative stereotypes in these environments. And the awareness of being both visible and overlooked creates an internal tension that can harm performance, confidence, and sense of belonging. Now, how many Black women have had thoughts in their head of being themselves or fitting to the status quo? This kind of cognitive dissonance, in your mind, you want to be yourself, but outwardly you're presenting as something else. Collins' framework helps explain how these experiences are not just personal, but structurally rooted in the intersection of race, gender, and power. In my philosophy class, we read Tracking Epistemic Violence and Tracking Practices of Silencing by Christy Dodson. And we talked a lot about the influence of testimonial smothering, which is when an audience demonstrates testimonial incompetence with respect to the content of potential testimony, and also testimonial quieting, when an audience fails to identify the speaker as a knower, and how constantly being coerced into silence can damage a Black woman's self-esteem and is a form of harm. I would like to say that I concur and equate this to stereotype threat, because it can be innocent or intentional depending on the circumstance, yet harming the person that it is being inflicted on. leaving Black women's self-esteem to be damaged, per Anna Julia Cooper in A Voice from the South by a Black woman of the South. How she discusses how Black women experience both racial and gender-based oppression, creating a double disadvantage. This highlights how constantly being aware of others' perception can impact self-expression, confidence, and identity. Pressures that still affect Black women in academic and professional settings to this day. Black women philosophers have always been on the back burner and discredited for solely speaking to Black women's struggles and needs. Though, as I just stated, Black women philosophers have talked about the harmful effects of society's stereotypes and how it leaves Black women burnt out and undervalued. This loss in self-esteem and unappreciation started at education and learning in school that your identity in some people's eyes is viewed as less than, and you have to work harder to prove that your social group is worthy. Furthermore, bell hooks in Teaching to Transgress, Education as a Practice of Freedom explores how racism and sexism shape classroom dynamics and limit Black women's freedom to learn and express themselves authentically. Her ideas reveal how internalized fear of confirming stereotypes can silence students and make them feel alienated in educational spaces. Social psychologists Claude Steele and Joshua Arneson recognized this and performed a test called Stereotype Threat in the intellectual test performance of African Americans. This study provides empirical evidence of stereotype threat by showing that African American students perform worse on standardized tests when their racial identity was emphasized. The data highlights the psychological weight of stereotypes on academic achievement. This data supports a theory from Patricia Hill Collins' Outsider Within by illustrating how internal awareness of stereotypes can translate into real-world performance outcomes. Now, I know the rebuttal might say that we don't need a philosopher's text to understand stereotype threat, or that this is just a psychology issue, but I beg to differ. Philosophy is all about epistemology, and the philosophers use this knowledge to share and show the harm of stereotype threat in academic texts. I think it's important to use what's already out there to strengthen the support of the social psychologists who I just named in order to see not only data and tests, but other experiences and articles on this issue. This allows Black women to be represented in multiple fields of work, not just from a scientific standpoint. Without philosophy and the work that Anna Julia Cooper, Patricia Hill Collins, and Bell Hooks did, there will be no backing for stereotype threat besides the test performance experiment. Black women need to understand that carrying these tropes of strength and independence harms the mind and body, leading to burnout in education and careers that we enjoy. Instead, I urge more Black women to read Black women philosophy in order to see the representation in their thoughts and also understand how to call out the harmful threats, whether that be stereotype threat or testimonial smothering and quieting. Because Christy Dotson, in her article Inheriting Collins, says that there's a problem with knowledge and Black women are oppressed due to epistemological failures. We cannot continue the cycle of unknowing. We need to call it out and spread it to the community and change the status quo. My name is Chloe Eason, and I'm signing off.